The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Access Advanced. We are going to have an awesome class today where we talk about some of the more advanced features of Microsoft Access database. So with that said, feel free to open up the Northwind file, and we're going to get right into it. Thanks, everyone.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at learnitanytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
All right, so now that we have the Northwind file open, you'll see here once again, as always, this pops up as our startup screen, and it just tells us, this is some sample data. We'll click OK on that, and then we'll see a main switchboard here. We've talked about this as well, and all we have to do here is just click the X. And now we're right back into the main interface. So what we're going to start off with today is a really awesome feature, which is forms. I know in the previous videos, we've talked about tables where we have our data, queries where we can query those tables, and now we are on forms. And if you remember, we have tables, queries, forms, reports, pages we don't need. Those are old. We don't use those anymore. So you can even hide those if you want to. And then we have macros modules. So in this entire training, these are the next different access objects that we're going to go over. Forms, reports, macros, and modules. And we're going to have a lot of fun with macros a little later on. I'll show you a couple that we can build. So the first thing we're going to talk about, though, is creating forms. And as you saw before, we had that main switchboard form, right? That was right here where we can link to different places. We also had that startup form, which can display information. And I'm going to now show you how we can create a data entry form. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our Create tab. And inside of our Create tab here, you'll see that we have all the different types of objects from Access: table, queries, forms, reports, and macro code. So it really goes in that same order that you see it in the list here. But what we're going to start off with is just simply a blank form. So we're going to go to the form section there, and we're going to click on blank form, and then we're going to link it to one of our tables. So I'm going to click on blank form here. It's going to open up this form 1. That's the default name for it. We can make it bigger if we want to. You can just expand that. And at this point, we have nothing connected to this form. So we need to select the table we'll use. And the table that I want to use today is the employees table. So on the right-hand side, you should see the field list, and you can show all the different tables. If you don't, for some reason, see this field list, let's say you click it by accident, no worries. In the Form Layout Design tab that you'll now get, this contextual tab, you'll see the Tools command group, and you'll see Add Existing Fields. So you could just simply click on that again, and it'll open up all of your tables. We'll click on Show All Tables here, and then we'll choose the Employees table. You're just going to click the little plus icon to expand it. Now, once I click on that plus icon, you'll see all the different fields that I have in this table. And we're going to add a couple of those to create our actual form. So let's say that we want to start adding things to this form right away. If you do click and drag, let's say I want the first name, for instance. I click and drag, it actually locks it in place here. This is a snap feature. I don't like this feature, but it does come with the layout view. So if we look in the view, there's 3 views here. We have the layout view, the design view, and then the actual form view. Layout view is okay if you're really just not wanting to customize this too much and you just want it to snap in place. But me, I like to customize mine. I like to, move things around the way I want the form to look. So I'm going to actually be using the design view. So I'll switch into that view right now. And just to get rid of this first name, you can just click on it and press the delete key on your keyboard. So let's switch views to design view. And this is what it looks like. Now, in the design view, you'll see that this is pretty blank and you can move this around. You can even minimize this if you want to, just to see how big your form is going to be. And I like to make it a little bigger, but there's nothing here right now. So you'll see here in the details, it doesn't really show much. But the minute that I take something like, let's say, employee ID, and I drag it on here, you'll see now it has this little grid icon, right? This is the space that our entire form is going to look like. So I'm just going to make that a little bigger. You'll see you could grab the sides here, make this form however big you want. You might go like this. This looks good. Maybe a little bigger here. And there it is. So however big you want this form to be, you can make it. And then I'll just make the window bigger too, to stay consistent. And there it is. That looks great. So one thing you should know about adding different fields to this form is that it comes with two things. It comes with the actual label, and then it comes with the value that you're going to be filling in. So this is what the label is going to say, employee ID, and then this is really going to be whatever the employee ID is. So these come as a pair, and if you click on one, even if you have one selected and you move it, they both move. So even if this is only selected and you move it, they both move. But if you look in the top left-hand corner here, you'll see these little square boxes. So those gray square boxes allow for you to click and drag one at a time. So you can rearrange this any way you want. But if you just grab the entire box, it moves the whole thing. So for me, I want to go like this. I'm going to actually space this out really nicely. I'll put employee ID up top there. And you can even make this bigger if you wanted to, or this one a little bigger. But remember, if you're grabbing like this, it moves them both. If you're grabbing here, that's where it moves it. Just the one piece at a time. I'm going to just move this a little bit there. And this one here. Now, if you're trying to get it really close to matching, you're like, wow, but this is really hard to do. It is. You don't have to worry about that. There's a cool little trick I have for all of you. So you can either just click on this, right? And it's going to affect both of them. Or if you want to select both of them, you can actually go on this little ruler here and just click and drag. And you can select both at once. And then go to the arrange command group. Then this is where you can control all different types of alignment, size, spacing. You'll see that all over here in the last command group. You can make them on the same spacing, same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to align these to the top. Now they're on the same exact size here. And I'm actually going to space them equally horizontally. And they're already spaced out pretty nicely. So at this point, now I'll just move this over. I'm moving them both at once. And I'm going to make this one a little bigger, just because you don't know, the employee ID might be a little big. So something like that. And that's all set. Now if I go over and I want to see what the form is going to look like at this point, I can go to Form Design, go over to View, and go to Form View. And now I see Employee ID 1. And you can even go through each form, Employee ID 2, 3. So right now there's not a lot of info here, but we'll add some more right now. So let's go over back to the design view, and we're going to add a couple more things. And I'm actually just going to start snapping stuff. So what I mean by that is I'm going to double click instead of clicking and dragging. So I'm going to double click on first name, and it snaps it there. Last name snaps it right underneath in a perfect spacing. Let's do, maybe I want the title of the person, what position they have, and also maybe their hire date, or maybe their birthday and then hire date, just all the information about my employee here. Now, I want to move these a little bit down, so instead of just clicking each one, it's already perfectly spaced, you can click and drag like this, and select them all at once, and then just click and move them around. So I'm going to move these about right here, and I'm just using those grid boxes. They really do help out a lot. So I'm just aligning it with this grid box here. Now I'm going to do the same thing with another set of information. I'm going to grab the address. I'm going to grab the city. Let's skip region. Let's do the postal, or I guess we could add region, whatever you like to add, postal code, and maybe the country as well. And then once again, I'm just going to select all of these and just click and drag them over here. Try to make them nice and even. Ooh, I like that. That looks great so far. All right. And then maybe move this. Remember, you can grab them like this too and just move them a little more center. Something like right there. So you can always go back to your form view just to take a look at how this is coming together. And I think it looks good, except we need some more room for first name, titles, the address. So I'm going to make these values a little bigger. So I'll go back to design view. Once again, you could just select all those. And I'll increase that. And then select all that. And I'll increase that. So that's what I love most about this, is that you can quickly resize things, space them, just by clicking and dragging and selecting. Let's add a couple more cool things on this form. Of course, I want their phone number, so I'll add that. I'm going to take their phone number, and let's bring it, maybe I want that down here, a little separate, or yeah, I think maybe a little bit of a gap here just to show that these are a little different in spacing. And then I'll make this a little bigger here. And then who do they report to? I think that'll be a really nice one too. So I should have here a reports to. There it is. And I'll take that and put it here. Now, once again, if you want these like identically, always remember you can grab all of this and you can then go over to the arrange, align, and you can align them to the top like that, or you can align them to the bottom, however you want these to be. Okay, I like the top. That looks good. And then I'll just take these ones here and just bring them down a little bit. I want these to be a little bit of a separate thing that we're looking at. And then I'll take these and I'll even do the spacing and equal them out horizontally. All right, this is looking great so far. I do want to do one more thing. I want to add in my note section. So I'm going to add in some notes. And I don't like that this is over to the left. So remember, always, if you want to separate these and move them separately instead of in sync, right, you can just click and drag by the square there. And of course, it's notes. So I do want to make the notes a little bigger. So I'll make the form a little bigger and then drag that out. Also, a quick note, if you did have the form a little smaller, but then you start dragging this, it will automatically extend it. So no worries there. And I think this looks awesome. And that's it. This is my form for right now. And if I want to, I can now start to look at this in our form view. Let's see what we come up with. And look how nice this little form is. It has Nancy's name, the last name. Nancy is a sales rep. When Nancy was hired was 1992. And look at that. The reports too, maybe I want to see that a little bigger. So always remember, you can just take a look. Just like that. And now let's take a look what it looks like. Perfect. And this is just employee 1. Let's look at the next employees. There's 9 of them. You can see that 1 out of 9. Let's look at the next one. Awesome. This looks like there might be more notes, so you might want to drag the note section down a little more. But that's why it's so great to look at this, see if there's anything that you need to really fix on these. And there we go. This looks awesome. This is a nice little form. So now, the next thing I may want to do here is filter out what I'm looking at. So you can use sorting here and filtering for these as well. You'll see up top we have the option to sort and filter. So if I wanted to just see all of my sales representatives instead, I can go to filter. I can either filter number filters, right? Equals, does not equal. I can do a short or small filter, or I can click into, let's say, title and do a filter and do a text filter there and saying it has to contain or be equal to sales representative, and then title is equal to. So you still have all of those things that you've seen in queries and in tables. Same thing in forms. You can do sorting, you can do filtering any way that you like. So take a moment, try this out on your own. If you want to save this form, you're more than welcome to. Save it as, maybe form example or however you want to name it. I'm going to name this form, let's just call it my form. So to save this form, if you're going to exit it, it'll even ask you, do you want to save changes to it? And you could say yes. And then you can just put in my form, or like I said, whatever you want to call it. So take a moment, try this out on your own. It'll now be in this form here. You can reopen it. And when we come back, we're going to talk about different form controls. So now that we've created this form, we're actually going to start to use it to fill in some information. We know that we can already see former information about our employees. So in the bottom left-hand corner, I can see we have 9 records here, and we can skip through, or we can even use the little last record icon to go to the last one, and we can see all 9 of our employees. But if I want to add in more information now to this table, and remember, we created this form from the employees table, we can use the form to actually add in information to that table. So to do this, we're going to go to the bottom left-hand corner again, and we're going to choose this little right arrow with the star, and that's going to be for a new record. And let's add in our information, and you'll see it automatically saves. So the employee ID is automated, so that's going to be a number 10. We don't have to fill that one out. It just goes in as new. We'll put in some of our information here. We can click into each one. Put in the title. Let's pretend that we're the owner. I don't know, or CEO, whatever you want to put in. And then let's do birthday. Choose whatever you like here. Or you can actually just type it in as well. So if I want to just start typing it in, I can put some information in here. And then let's put the hire date. Let's say we were just hired in November. Put in a phone number. Who we report to. And this one has a little drop down, which is pretty cool. So we're not going to put anything here. You can leave this blank since we're the CEO. And then we'll just put in an address. Just going to take information. And there we go. So at this point, we've now entered in some data, and you'll see right away that it automatically changes this to employee ID. And if we close this form and we open up the employees table, we should now see ourselves at the bottom. How cool is that, right? So this is pretty awesome here. And then if you ever need to edit the data again, remember, you can always pop up my form, and you can even edit previous data. So for instance, we put region America, but they wanted pretty much the state. So we'll put NJ for New Jersey, or whatever you want to put, and close that off, and look, it updates immediately. So these forms, not only can we create them to see previous existing information, but we can also add in new information, and it saves automatically. So take a moment to try that out on your own. When we come back, we're going to talk about form controls. So we can start to add in really cool, unique items in our form besides just our fields. All right, so I'm going to close out the field list, this table, and let's open up our form. And then when we get back, we'll put this into design view, and we'll talk about some of these controls up top here. So now that we have our form and it's set up pretty nice, we want to add more things to it. And we can do that by making sure we're in the design view for our form, and you'll see the form design tab. Now in this tab, we have a ton of different things. We can use controls like text controls, or we can add in labels or buttons. There's a ton of them. We can add links, we can add images, we can add charts. So whatever you want to add to your forms, take a look at some of these different controls, and we'll use a couple of them in a moment. But looking at these form controls, we also have right next to it other things too, like we can enter in a logo, a title, or even the date and time to this form. So let's say, for instance, that I do want to add in some sort of header, right? Which means at the top of my form, I maybe want to add in a title and a date. So we're going to click on title, and it will automatically add in the form header with a title box where we can name this whatever we like. And let's just call this employee information form. Employee information form. Now, I'm going to make this a little smaller here, just so that we can add in a logo if you want to. Now, the logos don't come over perfectly. You really have to have a perfect image for this to work. But instead of having a logo, I'm going to do a date and time, actually. So we can click on date and time. You can either include the date and how it's going to look, and the time. I don't need the time. I'm just going to include the current date and click OK. Now, it does come over as an actual formula or a function, right? So this function is built into Access, very similar to the functions you might have used in Microsoft Excel or maybe Google Sheets or maybe Smartsheet. So these are very similar. And even though it says equal date there, if I now run this back into form view, look how nice that looks. It has a nice little header there separating it, and we see what the date is. So I just think this looks amazing. Once again, just something that you can add in with these form controls. Now, another thing we can add in here is calculated form controls. So we're going to do calculated fields. To create a calculated field, we're going to take previous existing fields and we're going to create a calculation from it. So for instance, maybe I also want to know how many years this person has been with the company. And I want to put that like maybe over here, how many years they've been with the company. Now to actually do that, I'm thinking about it. I probably will use a text box to display this. And then I'm going to take the hire date when they were hired, and I'm going to subtract that from today's date. So we're going to be using that date function we just saw before, right, to get this date, and we're going to use it in our formula. So to do this, let's all go back over to design view, and we're going to go over to our form design and choose our text box form, right? So that's the form control we want to use, text box. And we'll then just click and drag a little text box over here. You can move it around. And once again, I'm just going to change this label here because it looks like text 22. And I'm just going to simply rename it. We could put years at company. Years at company. Something like that. That looks good. And then I'll just move it a little over again. And then in this box, that's where it'll actually have the years in the company. And I don't need that box to be too big. So at this point, it's known as an unbound object, which means that it has nothing inside of it. It's unbound. It's not bound to any certain data or source at this moment. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure the property sheet is up. If you don't see the property sheet over here on the right-hand side, you can always turn this on by clicking property sheet up top here and toggling it, or you can just right-click and choose properties. So I'm going to right-click on the unbound, and I'm going to select properties. And you'll see these little tabs over here. We're going to go to the data tab because we want to put some data in here. As of right now, under control source, so the source of the data, there is none. That's why it's unbound. We want to bound this to data, but we don't want any specific data from the table we chose. We actually want to create our own calculated field. So instead of choosing from the dropdown, we're going to click the three dots next to it. It'll open up what's known as the expression builder. Now, this is where things get pretty much like Excel, right? It's like a formula bar right here. And inside of this formula bar is where we're going to write our function. Now, in this function, we want to use the function dateDiff, which will find the difference between two dates. So you'll see here in expression elements, there's a ton of different elements here, including functions. So I'm just going to click on the little plus icon for functions, and I'm going to choose the built-in functions. Inside of those built-in functions, we're going to use the date and time category. Since it's, dealing with the difference between two dates, we can click date time, and let's look for date diff, which is right here. It'll even tell you what it does and show you what all of the function arguments are. So I'm going to double click to add that in. Now, when we're doing this, you've seen this before in previous videos if you've been with me for my intermediate and beginner levels. For the interval, we can choose what it is. Is it going to be in months? Is it going to be in years? Is it going to be in day? Now, I want to know how many years they've been with the company. So I'm going to, in quotes, put in Y. That's determining that this is taking the year out of the date and it's subtracting those years. If it was days, we would put D. If it was months, we put M. So in this case, we're now going to choose the date 1. And to find the date 1, you can actually find that in your form. So inside of my form, you can find the higher date. And let's go look for that. And there it is. And you can just double click on it. And then we also want today's date. Now, remember how we got today's date before when we used it in the header? We did equals date, or, well, the system did it for us, but it gave us a good idea of what we're going to use. So for date 2, we're going to go back to the built-in functions, date and time, and choose the date function. And that's it. These other ones, first day of the week, we don't need that for this. So we could just click on it and click delete, click on it and click delete. And then we can backspace those 2 commas because we don't need those, so that it looks like that. Now this should work beautifully. So we'll click OK. Let me zoom out. And it's in the box now. So let's see what it looks like when we go back to our form view. And how cool is that? Nancy's been here for 33 years, which makes sense. Andrew, 33 years. Wow, all of them have been 33. Oh, not Margaret. 32, 31. And if we go down to ourselves, if you entered yourself in, we've only been at the company for a year. Right? We just started. Not really a year, but yeah, close enough. All right. So try this out. This is a fun little calculated field. Try this out on your own. When we come back, we are going to talk about how we can now add buttons for further navigation, or if we want to close the form, or maybe we want to print the form, we can create buttons to do that for us. All right. I'm going to go back to design view, try that out on your own, and then we'll have some fun with buttons. Our form is coming together pretty amazing. So what we're going to do next is add a couple of buttons to really increase that interactivity. So with the interactions of buttons, we can do many things, whether we want to close the form, or maybe we want to print the form, or even navigate these forms. We can do that by utilizing our buttons. Now you can find the buttons in the form design tab, and it's right over here. It looks like a little rectangle. I'm going to give it a click. It's called a button control. And let's put the button control, let's do that. Yeah, we can do it right over here where we maybe want to close or print the form. So I'm going to just draw a button here. And immediately it says, okay, what kind of category do you want? Do you want to record something, navigate, right? You can go to the first record or the last record. I know the forms already have that by default, but this just makes it a bigger button. But let's do this one. Let's say that we want to maybe close the form. And you'll see it has this little exit door, which I love the icon there. It's so great that they give those to you. So let's click on next. But you don't have to use the picture. You can actually use a text instead, like close form. Or if you do want to use the picture, they have 2 of them, exit doorway or stop. Or you can even just pick any type that you like. But I'm just going to show the ones that make sense to this. And I'm going to use stop, actually. I really do like that one. And let's click finish. So whenever you click this button, that's what's going to happen. It's going to stop. Now, I do like the button format. You can reformat this as well. So if you go over here to the format, You can choose the background color if you wanted to, the border styles, all these different options here. And then once I have the button, I'll then create another one. And this one will be a little bigger, and it's just to do the print. So I'll do form operations, print a form, and it has a little printer icon. So I think that looks great. I'm going to keep that and click finish. You can make that a little bigger if you like. And then I'm going to put these two, once again, you can use a range and align them to the bottom here so that they're together. And that's it. This looks amazing. Let's take a look at what our form looks like fully. We'll change this to form view, and this is our form. So if we want to print this, we'll click print, and it'll print it right away. Or if we want to close the form, I'll say, do you want to save any changes? I'll say yes, and it closes the form. So pretty cool. You can use those buttons to do many different things, but this is our form. It looks amazing. The last thing I do want to talk about before we move on to really interacting with queries with forms is formatting the form. So you'll see we have this like white interface here, and we have the buttons with the borders around them. We could change a ton of those things. So going back over to the design view, we'll see here that we have the format tab. And inside of the format tab, we can change any piece of this and format it, right? Format means change the appearance. For instance, maybe I want to click here and I can do alternating rays, or I can even fill this entire shape. Maybe I want to do like a really light gray color. So now it's all light gray. Maybe, for instance, I want these not to have any borders to them. I can go to shape outline and say transparent, so I don't need any border outlines. Maybe I want them to be blue, and now they're blue. So you can pick and choose what makes sense. I'm going to choose all of these at once to make blue, and then all of these to make blue. And I'll keep that as like a common theme. And let's do this one. And this one. And we'll also do the last one here. Maybe we'll do notes too. Why not? And there's no right or wrongs to this. It's just whatever you think it goes. And then for the colors themselves here, I might even fill it in with that lighter blue, kind of like we have up top. I think this is going to be really awesome. We'll do that for all of these. This one, and you can hold the control key and select multiple at once. And there it is. That looks awesome. So let's take a look up. Let's not forget employee ID there. And let's go back to the view. And there it is. We have a fun little form. So take a moment, try out the formats, add some buttons to it, see what you come up with. And then when we get back, we are going to actually create a query, and then we're going to interact with that query through a form. All right, so enjoy this, and I'll see you back soon. All right, so the next type of form we're going to create is a form that interacts with queries. So we can close out my form, and the next form we're going to create is going to, once again, interact with the query that we'll create. So the first thing we need to do is create that query. So let's go to the Create tab, and inside of the Create tab, we'll go to the Queries command group and choose Query Design. Once there, we'll then actually use our customers table to build out this query. You can either double click or just click and drag it. And let's build out a query. We're going to use the customer ID. That's the key. We're going to use company name, contact title, address, city. Let's do the postal code, the country, and the phone number. So we have a nice array of information here. Now we're going to save this. So you can go up to the top and click on the save icon, and we'll save this as query form and click OK. So now we're done. You can actually exit this query out. We don't need it right now. And now we're going to build the form that interacts with that query. So to build that form out, we'll once again go to the Create tab. And inside of the Create tab, we'll go over to the Forms command group and choose blank form. Once we click on that, we'll then have our form here, and you can save it as whatever you like. I'm going to actually save this form as position criteria form, because we're going to use the position criteria to actually add information in based off of what their position is. So not only will this form be able to look at only certain positions, but we'll be able to add things to the query as well in the tables. So when we click OK, we now have our position criteria form. Now let's get into the design view. Remember, we can go to form layout design and always click on that view drop down and then change it to design view. And let's add in a combo box control. Now, a combo box control, you'll find it under the form design under our controls, but there is one that looks similar to it. So you'll see our box control right here, the combo box. It looks like this. Then you'll see one that looks a little similar, but that's actually a list control. So that's a list box. We're using the combo box. That's the one we want. So just make sure that when you hover over, you see which one it is. I'm going to click on combo box, and I'll draw it right here. Now it will pop up this wizard, and we're going to actually link this to the customers table since our query is the customers table as well. So we can go in and click next, choose customers table and click next. And at this point, we need to figure out where the position lives, right? So the position lives under contact title. So the available fields here, we're actually going to choose contact title and then click this button here to move it over to the field we want. But it is important to note that when you do this, it actually adds two columns, right? It automatically adds the contact title, but also the column key. So when you click next, if you wanted to do some sort of sorting, for instance, if you wanted to do contact title as the sort order, you can do that, but you'll also see customer ID there too. And that's important because we're going to have to fix this later on when we get duplicates in our dropdown. So let's all click on contact title. We can make that ascending, click next. It shows us what it's going to look like, a little preview. And we could just click next and it'll hide the key column. So that's good. We want that. And then we can click finish. Now at this point, if I go over to the form view, it has our dropdown now, but it has the position duplicated, and we need to fix this. So a way that we'll fix this is we have to go to the properties box, and we actually have to, under the data, change the row source. So where's this data coming from? So we'll go to design view, right click on unbound, and go to properties. Once there, you'll see over here, we have our data tab. And we're going to go to the row source, and we're going to click on the row source and then click the three dots. So when we click into there, you'll see the three dots. And you'll see that we now have three different fields here. We don't need all three of those. So we're going to delete the customer ID, just select it from the top and click delete. And then once again, just click right in the top area to select an entire column and delete. And that's it. We're good there. Now, once we click back into the properties of the property sheet, the entire query, over on the right-hand side, you'll see that right now, it's not allowing for unique values. We want unique values. We don't want duplicates. So under unique values, we'll just change that to yes. Once we're done, we can close this out. Say yes, we want to save it. And if this happens to you, right, if the contact title needs to be in here, so for some reason it really wants this here, we can move this back. And let's see if it'll do it now. There we go. So if you don't want to delete that contact title, or if it gives you that error message, just make sure you re-add that. And I'll showcase that again. Once again, when we came in here, we deleted that one piece, right? And it was the contact title. And for some reason, it didn't like that we deleted it. So when you first click in here, you'll see contact ID, contact title, contact title. delete the contact ID only. Don't delete contact title, contact title. I know it duplicates, but for some reason, the query didn't like that. So now that we've done that, the next thing we have to do is go to format, because once again, it's pulling in the contact ID and the contact title. So it counted 2 columns. We only need 1. So we're going to change the column count to 1 and the column width to just 1. Now that we have both of those, it should work beautifully. So if you want to go test it out, change the view to form view, and there it is, a nice little list, no duplicates. But we're not done yet, because we're going to use this contact list to actually create a way for us to just search for a certain position, and then also we can add data to a certain position. So let's add a button to confirm what our selection is as a submit button. So the first thing I want to do is go back to design view. I'm going to move the label over and redesign it, because right now it just is the name of the field. I'm going to call this position search. And this looks good. And now we're going to add a button. So once again, under form design, we can go over to the button control, and let's add a button right underneath here, just like that. And for this button, we're just doing a simple running of that query. We created that query before, so we want to run that query. So it's going to be under miscellaneous, run query. We'll then, after we select miscellaneous run query, we'll then choose the query from our list here, and we called it query form. So just look, it's in alphabetical order, and click next. And then you can pick a picture. You can choose either a picture, or I like to just use a text. I'm going to use a text, and it's going to just be the submit button, submit, and I'll click next. You can name it whatever you want. If you want to call it the submit button, or just remember it's command 2, you're more than welcome to. I'll call it submit. BTN for button. And then we can click finish. And now we have a submit button here. And I'll just put it right here. So now that we've created this button, we have to actually connect our button to the query. So we're going to go open up the query. And then once we open up that query, remember it was called query form, we're going to bring the query up and go over to the design view. Because this button is going to be connected to the position, we have to look for contact title, which we have here. And under the criteria for contact title, go to the criteria, and we're going to actually use the builder to make the connection. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do here is, once you go there, click into the criteria, make sure you're in there, and we're going to go up to the top under query design tab, that contextual tab, under query setup, and you'll see what's known as builder. Okay, but make sure you're in the criteria, so that's where you're putting the information. Now, once you click on builder, we're going to have to make the connection. We're going to go over to the builder north wind, so the actual file. We're going to go look for the form, so you'll see forms, and I'll zoom in for this part. So go to north wind, click the little expansion, forms, all forms, so you can see all your forms, and you're going to double click on your position criteria form here. So there it is. And then once you have that located, remember that button that we named. If you did name it, I named the button right here, submit button. So we're going to choose that button, and then we're going to double click on it and then click OK. And make sure you double click on it, because if you don't double click on the button, it won't work. But before we do that, if we don't want to tie it to the button, because we already did that, if we want to tie it to the combo box, we can do that as well. So actually, let's try that. Instead of tying it to the submit button, we're going to go to the combo box and double click on it. Now the dropdown will be connected to the combo box. So let's do that instead. Or the dropdown will be connected to the query. And we'll click OK. So at this point, we've now done this. We've created the submit button, which is connected to the query, and we've now connected the dropdown to the query as well. So we can go in and close out this query, save it, of course, and now this should work beautifully. So let's try this out, this form. We're going to go in, select a position. Let's say we want to just see the owners. Click submit, and it should pull up a query for only the owners now. How cool is that? Right? And then we can start adding things to this query. Or if I want to go back to that form again, right? Maybe I just want to see sales agent and submit that. Now I only see the sales agent, and then I can add to the sales agents. So this form is a quick way to now access our data by putting in some sort of criteria, the position. So we're searching for a position, we're submitting it, and then we're getting the query returned, and then we can start to add to that query, just like that. So pretty cool how forms can not only be used to pull information, right? We can also use them to search for things. All right, so take a moment, try this out on your own. And then when we come back, we're going to switch gears and we're going to actually build a report. So we've gone through tables, we've gone through queries, we've gone through forms. Next up is reports. All right, so now that we've built this form, we're actually going to switch gears and start building reports. Now, building a report is very similar to the way we've built the form. So you'll notice a lot of similarities as we're building it, and you'll feel very comfortable. So the first thing I'm going to do is just click on the X here. Let's close out our form. You can save it if you like. And let us click on create. And now we're going to move down our list. We've created tables. In our previous sessions, we've created queries. We've created forms. And now we're going to be creating a blank report. So let's all click on blank report. And it's going to pop up this little dialog box here. And the first thing we'll do is choose what table we want to use. Now for this report, I'm going to use the customers table. So we'll go to our field list and let's click on show all tables. Remember, if you don't see your field list here, or if you exited out by accident, you can always just go right here. You'll see add existing fields and it'll pop right back up. So no worries. We'll click on show all tables and we're going to choose customer table and expand that. And now we can start to add in what fields we want. So let us start by adding our fields. We're going to switch to our design view though. Otherwise, remember, it will get locked just like our forms, right? So once again, very similar, the forms and the reports. And we're going to click on view and we're going to go to design view. And it looks, once again, almost identical to the way we built the forms. So now we can go in and we can design what we want. But before we just start designing, the one thing that is a little different here is for reports, we actually get a page header at the top of the report. We get details. And if you scroll down, we actually get a page footer as well. So this page header and footer, whatever you put in here, will show up on each page. So we're going to start by building this report by dragging whatever fields we want and then making a beautiful report. So for this one, let's do this. Let's grab our customer's ID. All right, so we want to grab customer ID and click and drag it over here. And then we can just start double clicking to just put these in. So we're going to do company name, of course. We're going to do, and you'll see that one just went right on top of the other one. We're going to do the contact's name. I think that would be nice. What position they are. And what country they're from. And maybe their phone number too. We'll have a ton of these here. Now at this point, when we click and drag, remember that clicking and dragging two of these at once, or if you want to just move this one label, you can as well. If we go in now, and I'm going to just take all these and move them around a little bit. Just like that. If we go to see what it's going to look like in our report design tab, remember we can always switch the view and we'll choose report view. This is what it would look like. It would be repeating. So unlike a form where it's just one thing when you add a field, when you add these fields to a report, it actually displays the entire report. Not only that, we can also switch. You'll see another type of view called print preview. And this will show you how it would print on a page. And right now, this is not really nice looking, right? It's all over the place. There's nothing really happening. So I'm going to close out the report view, and I'm going to go back to the design view, and we're going to make these look a little nicer. So you can actually take these, just like I did here, and put it on top like that, and then move the whole thing. Put this one on top, and I'm just moving from the gray box if I want to move the label by itself, and then just clicking from the label on the border to move the whole thing. So always remember that gray box is for a single move of the label or the value, as opposed to the gray box, which moves them separately. And always remember it expands as well. So if I put something here, don't worry, it will expand. Now, just like our form, if we select this like this, we also have the Arrange tab where we can align this to the top. We can control the spacing. We'll do equal horizontally. That didn't really do anything really nice there, so maybe I'll just use Control Z on that one. And that's fine for now. We're going to move all this anyway in a moment. But let's take a look now what it looks like. And once again, it looks a little nicer, but there's all this space here. So to fix that, we'll close the print preview again. And we're going to take this details grid and make it way smaller, just like that. And what this will do is it'll actually stop the spacing. So when we go to view it now as a report view, we have a ton of different characters on here. And this looks pretty good. Now at this point, when we switch over to this, it looks okay, but I'm still having a problem here because our headers, right? Like customer ID, customer name, contact title, they're being very repetitive. So I might just want it where it only lists it once and then it has all the details underneath. So to do this, we actually have to take our labels and we have to move them into what's known as the page header. So remember, the page header repeats everything. So I'm just going to click and drag them a little bit. And then we'll add a couple other cool things here in a moment. Let's do this. Let's take the customer ID, and you can use Control X to cut it, and then click into the page header and use Control V to paste it. And we're going to just space these out nicely. I'm going to do that for all of these. So you can select them all the labels only, right? Control X to cut the labels only, and then up top, click in, and then we can use Control V. And hopefully, it'll paste them nicely. Now, if that doesn't work, and you have to go one at a time, that's okay too. For some reason, it's not really liking what I'm doing here, so I'll just click this one again. You can't just click and drag, unfortunately. You do have to cut it. I'll see if I can cut it again. Paste. That one worked beautifully. I'm going to see if I could do a couple of these at once. Cut. Paste. And there it is. So you might just want to do, instead of the keyboard shortcut, which was acting kind of funky, you might want to just right click, cut, and then copy. And once again, I'm just going to select all of these and arrange them to make them look a little prettier up top. And I'm going to try to space them equal horizontally. Oh, that looks amazing. Now, at the bottom here, I do want to make these a little smaller for the customer ID because I know they're not that big. So I'll do something like that. For the company name, it could be pretty big. So once again, you're just going to have to play around with the spacing and always go back to the view just to see what it looks like. Like that's starting to look really nice. But I notice here, for instance, some of these company names are pushing, right, past the limit. So I might need to make this a little bigger here. And always switch right back. Still a little more. So I'll just do a little bit more here. That is almost perfect. So some of those companies, I mean, they have longer names. If you don't mind it and you want to keep these smaller, you can. Or if you don't want to have a border around this, you don't need borders around these. So they all come with borders. You can actually select all of these, again, like this, go to format, and you can say that you don't want it to have a shape outline. So I'll say transparent, and let's see what that looks like now. Okay, I like it a lot better. And this one's once again a little bit too big. That looks like the biggest one. So we'll go in and make that a tad bit bigger. And then move this over as well. And then we'll just continue build out this entire contact name. To take a moment for this, have some fun with this, make things a little bigger, and we can worry about ordering it nicely in a little bit. For their title, I'll even put their title. You know what? We'll take out country. If you don't want country, you don't have to put country. I'll take in title. And then the phone number. And this should be really nice. How this is all going to come together. And always remember, you don't have to worry about the spacing here. It will auto adjust, but if you did want to see more spacing, you can. And we'll put in the phone number a little bigger as well. Put the phone number. All right. Then we can put them all aligned nicely. We'll align them to the top here. And then same thing here. Align them to the top. And let's see what this looks like. All right, a lot better. I like it. So this looks like a fun little report. You'll see our headers are stuck at the top now, customer ID, company name, and so on and so forth. We have a fun little report now. And if we want to see what it would look like being printed on paper or even in a PDF, that looks good. It's not so bad. The numbers fit, everything fits perfectly, and I'm pretty happy with this. So now that we have this, the next thing you may want to do is maybe add in at the footer here, maybe like a page number. That would be really awesome, so that we could see how many pages there are for this report. And this is pretty simple to do. We can actually add this by just simply going to the report design tab and clicking into the page footer, right? Make sure you're selected. You'll see it's selected because it has that black highlight. And just going to page numbers. You could choose page N out of M, like that. And I'm going to choose what position it is. Bottom of the page, I want it in the footer. And I do want it aligned in the center. I think that will look good in the center of the page. And there it is. So now let's view our report, or a print preview would be nice. And look, 1 out of 8. Now I do see here that page 2 is looking really horrible. So there's 16 pages here for this print. And that's because of spacing. So once again, we may want to change the way this is spaced out. Now, if you don't want the company name, maybe you just want your contacts, or maybe it is important to have the company name. It's up to you how your reports are. For just practice purposes, let's actually take the company name out. And we can move the rest of the stuff over, right? Let's actually just grab these. And let's see what this report would look like. And it's all about spacing. You can have a lot of fun with this. Just gonna bring that spacing back down a little bit. I do want to center this a little more now. And then of course, we're gonna align these so that they're nice and straight. Top, those were actually pretty good. And then at the top, and then maybe horizontally too. But I think they look pretty good. Let's see what it looks like. And there it is. Awesome. Now we have 8 pages, each one 2 of 3, 3 of 4, 4, right, 5 of 8, 7 of 8, and 8 of 8. So that's awesome now that we have this. Another thing that we can do with these reports, by the way, is we can format the reports. So you're more than welcome to change the colors of anything. If you go to the Format tab maybe I don't want it gray. Maybe I want it to be a certain color. So you can do alternating row color. Maybe I want it to be a light blue. And then maybe I want the actual color here to be a darker blue, right? So totally up to you on how you want to create these. Now I'll go to report view, and that's what it looks like. I love it. Looks great. And you can always change these too if you wanted to. But I think it looks good the way it is. And then going back to design view, maybe I want all of these to be bold and underlined. So you can always go back to the home tab and you can use these text formatting tools to bold this, underline them. You can make them a different color. Maybe I want them black, maybe a little bigger here, 14 font. And then let's take a look. Right? Looks a lot better. We just need to make sure that the spacing here for these is a little bigger. Oh. So we can actually fit the whole thing in. And I think we have it. I think this is going to be perfect. Look at that. Awesome report. So you can have a lot of fun with these reports, doing whatever makes sense in them. Now that we have this here, the next thing we're going to do, and by the way, if you don't like that it gets colored like this, you can always just, do a transparency if you want to. You can just do a transparent color, right? Or automatic theme, whatever you like. Or if you don't like the shape fill here, once again, something like that. And then just keep going back over to your report view, seeing what it looks like. That looks perfect. Okay, so now that we have this, let's actually save this as my first report. So I'm just going to go to save, and I'll say my first report, and we'll click OK. What we're going to do is, when we come back, we're going to get into calculated fields, being able to group and sort this. So you'll see at the bottom we have group and sorting, and we can even do totals if we wanted to. But we're going to talk about using calculated fields and also grouping and sorting in our reports. All right, so take a moment, try this out, build a report on your own, and then we'll have some more fun. All right, now that we have an awesome looking report, we're going to add a little bit of more data to it. So we're going to connect data from a different table that is connected to the data that's in this table being fed into this report. So the first thing we'll do is go over to the fields, existing fields, and you'll see right underneath, you'll see fields that are available in related tables. So that's what I love so much about Access, is it really showcases everything that is relational data, and it allows for us to simply add things that maybe we wouldn't think would be related to this data set, but it is. So for instance, let's take a look here at the orders, and you'll see that we have the customer, right, their name, contact title, and we'll make this a little bigger here. This is the customer ID. Bring this over. And maybe I also want to add in how many employees maybe they have, or, who is the employee that's connected to this customer, right? So we can add in employee ID, or we can add in, even what order date this customer had. So there's a ton of different options here that are connected to this. So let's do one that makes sense for us. Let's do, I don't know, maybe we want to see their order date. That'd be cool. So we're going to add the order date in here, and we can add that right in the middle. And we'll go to view from preview. And there we go. We now have an order date. And maybe we want to add more things, like maybe I also want to see when they ship the data, right? So the order date and the ship date. So I'm going to go over here, drag this over here a little bit, move this a little closer, and then we'll add in the ship date as well. And let's grab the ship date. and put it there. And then, of course, we can grab both of these and arrange them. Let's arrange them towards the bottom there. So now when we go over to our view, we can see their order date, their ship date, who the contact name is, the customer's ID, what title contact they have, and their phone number. So we get a nice list of information here. But maybe I want one more thing, right? We have their order date, we have their ship date. How many days have passed since they've ordered and since their product's actually been shipped? So maybe the ship timing. Well, we actually don't have that as a field in the orders, but we can make one here. We can make what's known as a calculated field. So to do this, we're going to add a text box. Control, remember under report design, we have text box. I'm going to add it right over here. And I'm just going to call this shipping time. So the bound part will be a little smaller because it's just going to be a number. So we'll do shipping time. And then we'll put that right there. The unbound, like I said, we'll make that really small because it's just going to be the amount of time that it took to ship this. So really, we're just taking the shipping date and subtracting it from the order date. And then we'll just grab those, align them nicely. There we go. Now, as of right now, there's nothing in the unbound, right? So we need to create the actual formula. So we're going to click into unbound and right click on that and choose properties to get to the properties. We'll then go over to the data section. And at this moment, we'll click on the 3 dots under source control, because that's where the source is going to be for what goes into this unbound box. When we click on that, we'll get our expression builder, and I'll just zoom in here. And what we want to do is we want to use that same function we used before earlier in the video, which is the date diff. So remember, that's going to be under functions, built-in functions, under the date and time category, and then you'll see date diff. We can double click to enter that in. Now, a little different, before we actually did years, today we're going to be doing the day, right? So we just need to put D in quotes. And now let the system know that we want to do the amount of days that have passed since the order date and the ship date. So the date 1 is going to be the order date. And we can grab that from the report. So it'll have everything that's in this report. If you didn't save, you might not see it, but you might have to save first and then you'll see it in the expression categories. Or you could just go and find it in the Northwind, right? So mine's luckily in the report already. So I'm going to do the order date, double click. And the second date's going to be the ship date. And then for the first day of the week, we don't need that, so delete it. First week of the year, delete it. And then we can backspace. And there it is. All right. Now, before we click OK and have this work beautifully, I also want to add in and concatenate a string of text. That way, it's not just saying something like 10, right? I want it to say 10 days. I want the word days in there. So after that, we're going to use an ampersand sign. And then we're going to do space days as a string of text. So it's going to be the number and then a space and days. And that's going to make it just a little more readable. So you don't have to do this, but I always like to do things like this. And we'll click OK. So now that we have this, once we click into our report view, how awesome is that? We have the order date, the ship time, right? Or the shipping date, and the shipping time, 8 days. So now we have an awesome looking report. What we're going to do after this is get into being able to now group this, right? So right now, when we look at that report view, it's just a report, right? Or if we go into print view, it's just a simple report. And all of the, for instance, sales representatives, owners, they're all mixed up into these 70 pages. So sales reps again, and there's owners, sales reps, because right now it's just going by customer ID and it's going by ascending order, right? Alphabetically. Instead of doing that, we can actually go into the design view And you'll see at the bottom, we have this group chart and total. We can go in and add a group to this so that we group our data in a certain way. So let's say that we want to add in and group by the contact title, right? Because the contact title is whatever their title is. So we can go in and click add a group and choose contact title. You'll see that once we do that, it actually adds in a section called contact title. And that's right up here. You'll see contact title header. Now, right now, there's nothing in that header, but we're going to take this contact title here and we're going to put it into the section header. So I'm going to take contact title, put it into section header here. And let's take a look at what that looks like. And you'll see now, look, we have account manager and then all the account managers, right? And if we keep going, we then have, so we'll keep going. And now right there, it switched. Now we're looking at assistant sales, and now it's all the assistant sales. So it just categorizes them now nice and neatly, which I really like. But now we're missing this big spot here. So what I would do is something like this. I'm going to just delete this out because there's no longer a contact title here. Maybe make this bold now and a little bigger. So we'll just format that. And we'll make that black text, bold, and then maybe 16 font, underlined. And we'll make this a little bigger here. And let's take a look at what it looks like. And look how cool that is, right? That's looking really nice. We do need to make it a little bigger here just because it's not fitting the whole word in. So let's just make that like that. Or we can even do the whole thing if we wanted to, really, just in case. And then we can view it and look at that account manager. Now, the one thing that I don't like is that, of course, we're going through this. There's now spacing here. So we might want to redesign what's going in here. And I think this would be a great time to add in like the company information that we had before. So I'm going to just add a field here, add existing field, and grab in the company name. And in the company name, again, I'll just cut that piece and put it up top here. That's the label. And then we'll take the company name and put it here. We can move the phone number over a little bit too. And then, of course, we want to copy that look there. So I'm going to use Format Painter and then apply it to this look. So I'll just copy that look, Format Painter, and then click into here and copy it. Now, if that doesn't work for you, no worries. All we did really was bold this. So we can go in, bold it, underline it, and I think we made it a 14 font. And then once again, we're just going to take everything and align it. So it's all about just going back and forth, aligning everything, making it look pretty. Perfect. And let's see what it looks like now. And look at how great that looks. We're just going to squeeze this design details here to make it fit more on one page. And that's what it looks like. So awesome. The last thing I may do is just remove that box from the company name. So remember, we can do that. If you click into here, you can just go to Format and then just do a transparent and then go look at it again. And it looks beautiful. Awesome. And the last thing I do want to talk about is being able to really take the data now and sort it a certain way, right? So you can sort by, let's say, company name. So you have all your account and then you'll have the company name in there. So you'll also see here, add a sort. We can do a company name now. And then now it's going to run it like this. So we have account manager, but then it's starting with the company name starting with B. And then if you have any cutoffs, just reconfigure everything, make it look good, and then you're all set. All right, so adding in those grouping and sorting can really add to a report. I think it looked amazing. You can make all different types of changes to these too. So if you wanted to, fix the weirdness between how the account manager looked, how it goes like, for instance, in the middle, if we get to like page 15, I think it was. So, there it is, page 12. It's kind of like starting here. We do have a way to fix that. You can actually open up the title header properties. Just right click, properties, and then go under the format section. And where it says repeat section and it says no, you can actually say you do want to repeat the section. So choose yes. And not only that, but you also want to force a new page after or before and after the section. I'm going to choose before section. And what that's going to do for us now is make it look like this. So we have account manager. I'm going to go through. And then I think it was page 13. And you see how it ends on account manager here at page 12. It then starts brand new again at the top for page 13, which I really do love that. So just different ways to really manipulate your report here. Feel free to try this out on your own. And then when we come back, we're actually going to switch gears again. We're going to get into coding VBA in Access, so Visual Basic Applications. And we have two awesome looking previewed VBA codes for you to use right away. You're more than welcome to use them, or you can come up with your own if you know VBA coding. But this is just a very introduction level to VBA. So try out this report, and then we'll have some more fun. All right, what we're going to be talking about next is VBA in Access. So VBA stands for Visual Basic Applications, and it's really great for being able to automate processes by using VBA code. So the first thing we're going to do is just a very simplistic code where we display a message box with VBA. So let's create a form. We're going to go to Create, Blank Form. And once we click into that, we'll then create a button, but let's first put it in a design view. And then we'll go to Create a Button under Form Design, and we'll grab a button control. Now, once you click on this, you're more than welcome to, choose whatever you want on this. I'm just going to click in to next and put in the text, and I'm going to say click me, and then finish. That way it just simply says click me. It's a button that really doesn't do much at the moment. Once you have your button, we'll right click on it and go to build event. Now, if it brings you into this form control, I really don't want to be here. So I'm going to once again click the X on that. And I'm actually going to go to the VBA. And to do that, I'm going to go to Create. And I'm going to go to Visual Basic. And that will open up my Visual Basic editor. But another way we can do this is in Form Design. You'll see the button here that you have selected. And under Form Design, you can also access the code for this exact button. So I'm going to click on View Code. And I'll open it up here for the button. So we're going to actually create a code for this button. You'll see here we have General, or we have the button here, Command 0, the Detail, or the Form. We want to choose Command 0. This is the code that we're going to write. So we want to replace the default code here, and we can keep the private sub means subroutine, Command 0 is the button, and underscore click means when we click on the button, do this, run this code. So I'm going to just put a couple of spaces here, and we're going to do first a note. We're going to use an apostrophe, and when you use an apostrophe in VBA, it means that you're writing just a note. It's not actually being executed when you run the code. It's just to give an idea of what this code is. And I'm going to put display a message box when the button is clicked. Right, something simple. Now it should turn that green when you press enter because notes are displayed as green. So a nice little color code there. Next up, we're going to use what's known as the message box function, which just simply displays a message box, and you can add in there a custom message, an icon, and also a title. So we're going to do MSG, capital BOX, so capital M, capital B, just like I have it there. We're going to put in what our message is. We're going to say, hello, welcome to Microsoft Access, and we'll do VBA. Maybe put a little exclamation and close the string of text with the quotes. Then we'll put a comma, and next up, we can choose an icon. They have a couple of pre-existing ones. I'm going to do VB information, and that's a little information icon, and put a comma. And then for the title, when the box pops up, I'm just going to say that this is a welcome message. So we can do welcome message, just like that. So now that we have this, we can save. And if you want to save the form, I'm going to just call it a VBA form. And click OK. And then we can close out VBA, and we're back in Access at this moment. And then we're going to click on this button and see if it works. So we want to change this over to Form View, and then we'll give that button a click. So now once we click on this, it says, hello, welcome to Microsoft Access VBA. Now, if this did not work for you, if for some reason it's still pulling on the Find Next when we created the button, a quick fix to this is to just go over to the Design View, go over to the Event section in the Properties. So you might need to right-click and open up your Properties pane. And you're going to go to Event and choose where it says On Click, the Event Procedure, which means it's going to run the code instead of doing whatever else was in there. So if it said something like enable macro or something weird, you could just click the drop-down, choose Event Procedure, and then it should work beautifully. If you now go back to Form View and you click it, it should work. So try that out. And then once you get this to work, we're going to come back and we're going to write a little bit more of an advanced code where we're able to actually search for a record in a table. So we'll create a table, we'll create our code, and then we'll make it work beautifully. Now that we've created a way to pop up a message, let's actually do a more detailed VBA code. For this example, we're going to search for a record in a table using VBA. So let's close out the VBA form. And the first thing we want to do is create a table. So we could go to the Create tab and choose Table. Now, once we create the table, we'll switch the view to Design View, and it'll ask us to name the table. Now, we're going to name this table My Employees, just like I did here. And it's important that you do the same naming convention because when we write our code, we're going to use this as the source where we're calling the information. So I'll click OK after I name it My Employees. And for these fields, we're going to keep the primary key, the ID as auto number, but we're also going to create a first name. That'll be a short text, and it should automatically put that data type in there. We'll do a last name. And let's do a position. And that's it. We only need those three. Now that we've created the table, we're going to add some data into it and switch our view back over to the datasheet view. Save the table. And we're going to put in 3 different people. We'll do John Smith. And John Smith will be a manager. Let's go with Alice Johnson. And Alice Johnson's going to be a developer. And we'll go with Bob Brown. Bob Brown will be an analyst. And then we can save this table and close it out. Now that we've done that, we're going to create a form, and this form will allow for us to put our VBA code into a button where once we click the button, it'll trigger the search, and whatever search input we have in there, it'll see if the record is actually in that table. So we're going to go to Create, Form Design, And the first thing we'll add in is a text box. Since this will be our search, we're going to label it, and we're going to call this, let's just call it record search. Record search. And I also want to be sure that I name the text box itself. And we can name it by going over to the property sheet. If it's not up, you can always just turn that on by clicking property sheet, or right-click on the unbound text box and click on properties. And in the other tab, this is where we're going to name it. Instead of it being called text 0, we're going to call it txt search. Now, once again, we want to be sure that we're using the same naming convention as you see here, because we're going to use that in the code. So txt and then search. That way we know what we're connecting to for the VBA code. Next, we're going to add a button for triggering the search. Underneath here, we'll do like a, submit. And for this one, we don't have to actually, you could click miscellaneous and say run macro, but you don't really need to put anything here because later on we'll fix that connection, kind of like what we did in the first section here for popping up that menu that said welcome, or popping up that message that said welcome. For the text, I do want to call it submit, and then we'll just click finish. And there's our submit button. And for the submit button, we're going to rename that as well by going to the property sheet under other. And instead of being called command 2, we're actually going to rename this. And let's just call this button search, or BTN search, just like that. So we did text search for the text box. We're naming this button search for the button. And the caption is already set, right? So we have our data. Everything looks good. Caption is submit. Perfect. So now we have everything set up. The next thing we need to do is now we need to actually open the VBA editor and go and do our code. So if you do want to save this form, let's actually save it real quick. And we'll just call this one a record search form, or whatever you like to call it here. We're going to right-click on the submit button. And once we do that, we're then going to go to build event. And if it once again brings you here, this is not what we want. This is the macro designer. We don't want the macro like this. We actually want to put this into a Visual Basic. So we can close this out. I don't know why it keeps doing that in the newer version. You used to be able to choose what you wanted, but for some reason in this version, it automatically puts it into macros. So if you just click form design and you have the button once again selected, you can go to view code like we did in the beginning, and that will open up right here for that form. So now that we're in the form, we're going to choose what we want, right? And what we're going to be working on is the button. So instead of having it general, you're going to select button search. That way we're actually in the button search. So when we click on that button, it runs this code. Now for this code's going to be a little more, let's say, a little more than what we did for the first example instead of just a message box. So just bear with me as we go through this, and I'll explain it as we go through. So the first thing we're going to do is pick the dimensions for our variables. And this is important because we're telling the system what we think the variable is going to be, right? So we're going to use what's known as dim. Dim is for dimension, and we're going to start to create these. So for this first one, I'm going to do one called dimDB, all right? So we're picking the dimension for a variable called dB. Now this variable dB, we're going to say that it's going to be a DAO. You'll see it in here. You can even press tab to put that in, dot, and we're going to look up database. Not databases. We're only using one database. We're going to call it DAO database. Now, if you're wondering, what's DAO stand for? Well, it stands for Data Access Object. And the object that we're putting DB as is the database. So that's what represents the current Access database we're looking at. So Data Access Object dot the database we're using. And I just named it DB for short for database. That way we don't have to write database each time we run this code. We could just write the variable. We're then going to do another dim, and we're going to have another one called RST. And we're going to put that dimension for variable RST as DAO again, right? Data access object here. And we're going to put this as a record set. So now you're probably knowing that RST is just short for our record set, right? And that represents a collection of rows or records that we're retrieving from the database or the table or the query, the table we created, like with John, Alice, and Bob. Now we're going to put our fourth variable. Our fourth one is going to be called, we're going to put the dim, right? The dimension is going to be called search name. So it's search name. And we're going to put search name, and we're going to put that as a string of text. So it's going to be a string, right? Which means just characters like words. And really what the search name is doing for us is it's storing the value that's entered in by the user in the search box, right? So that text box we created called text search, that's just going to search for the name, which is a string. Next up, we're going to now do another dim, and this is going to be the result that we get. So it's going to be a variable called result, and we're going to do that as, once again, a string of text. So now we have, right, variable db, rst, search name, and result. We're going to start to write out our code. So first thing we need to do is figure out if somebody puts nothing in the search box by accident, let's say they just hit submit and they didn't actually put anything in there, we need to have the code, take a look at that and acknowledge that there's nothing in there. So we're going to say that if is null is going to be a function that's pre-created by VBA that just checks, is there blank in there? So if is null, and we're going to open that, and we're going to put our expression, and we're going to say me dot, and we're going to actually use the text box name, text search. So that's why that's so important to use that text search, because we're going to look at the value of what's inside of that text search. So if in whatever's inside that text box is blank, or, right, we want to add an or in there, or if that text box, and we're going to search the value again, is equal to nothing, because we want to be sure it's false. If they put nothing in there, or it's an actual blank, is equal to nothing, right? Then, if that's true, I want you to pop up a message box, MSG, and we did the message box in the earlier example, and we'll say, please enter a name search, so that it gives them a little warning, like, hey, you didn't enter anything in. We'll put a little exclamation mark, like we put the icon sign, the information icon. We're going to do a VB exclamation mark. And then we'll also put in the actual message box, the title will be input error. Input error, like that. So it's going to be fun. And then we're going to actually exit this subroutine right here. So we're going to say exit sub, and we're going to end the if. All right, we'll put end if. So that just took care of if they put nothing in the box, right? If it's blank, a true blank, or if they really put nothing in there, then put a message saying, hey, you got to search for something, and then exit. Now we're going to create a variable for whatever they search for. So remember variable before was search name. We're going to use that search name is equal to that search, the text box, right? The text search dot whatever the value is. So whatever they put in that text box will now become the search name. We're then going to create a message box, MSG box. So we're using the same stuff we used earlier, and we're going to do search value. And the search value is going to be a string, ampersand sign, the search name. And remember, the search name is going to be the string. So it's going to return search value, and then it'll put whatever we searched for. So search name. Now that we have a message box that pops up if it finds the person's name, what we'll do next is set the database to the current database that we're looking at. So we're going to say set DB, and I'll run through all of this again, don't worry, as current DB, and then open close parentheses. We're then going to also set the RST, right? The record set that we're looking at, and we're going to set that to be equal to the database, the DB, we're going to open the record set because we want to open it up. And now this is where we can write, if you're familiar with SQL code, we're going to write our SQL code in here, where we're going to do a select. We're going to select everything. Everything gets with an asterisk. This is where you had to name the table the same thing that I did, my employees. And then we're going to use a where clause for the first name. And then we're going to say is equal to. And then we'll say ampersand the search name. And make sure you spell search right. That can mess up a code if you miss the R, right? Just one little mess up and that's it. And then we're going to do this. All right, so we're just saying that, hey, listen, I want you to search for everything where the first name is equal to something and whatever that search name is. So the first name is equal to the search name, you bring it back. And then we can close that up. Now we have to write another if, right? We're going to say if not RST dot EOF, all right? So this is another one of those where you're probably saying, well, Joe, what is the EOF now? Right? What's this mean? EOF means end of file. So if the record set end of file, it's just going to check if the record exists, right? It's checking if it's reached the end, which would indicate no records were found. So it's just the code to say, search through the whole table and see if you reach the end of the file. So if nothing pulled up, well then, we're going to say the result is going to be equal to, and this is what the result would be if it is. Remember, this is saying if not the end of file and it does find something, then the result is going to be employee found, right? Something like that. Employee found, or yay, or whatever you want to put. And then we'll say ampersand, and we're going to do VB. And then once you do the VB, you're going to do CRLF, VBCRLF, ampersand, underscore. We'll then put in the next thing, which will be, we want to have maybe the ID, right? Maybe we want the ID. And once again, we're going to do ampersand, RST, whatever that record set ID is. And we're looking specifically for the ID in the RST. And then we're going to say ampersand, and the same thing, VB, CRLF, ampersand, underscore. That way we're just being able to go to the end and just make this formatted nicely and all nice and pretty. Next up, we're going to do the name of the person. We want to know what their name is. Ampersand. That's going to be RST. And we're going to put in the right exclamation to say what we want from the record set. And we want the first name in this case, ampersand. And then we'll do that. And let's do an and the record set. I do want the last name too, of course. RST, last name. And then clear to the end here. So we'll do VB, C, R, L, F, ampersand, underscore. And the last thing we'll grab is the position, of course. I want the position. Where do they actually work? And we'll do the same thing, RST. But this time we're grabbing the position. All right, and that's it. That's going to be right there. So what that's doing is it's just grabbing the record. You know, if the record's found, it's building a string, the result. So it's accessing the value of a specific field. And if there are no records, then it just won't showcase nothing. The next thing we have to do is we need to tell it to display the result. So it's not just enough to write this. We have to now say, hey, you know, I need you to display the result. So it will display it, but if nothing is found, then it'll say no employee found. So I'll say else, and I'm going to do result will be equal, if it doesn't find anything, to no employee. You don't have to capitalize E, but you could say no employee found with the name, and then ampersand, and then you just want to say what the name was, so the search name, right, what we searched for, ampersand, and then a period, just like that. And then we're done. That's it. We're going to end that if. So we're going to say end if on that code. And that's it. That is our code. So a little different, right? A little more, coding here, but still not a huge code. So now we're going to just dive through this code, what it's doing, right? So the first thing we're doing is just declaring the variables. We're saying dim for dimension, DAO is standing for data access object, and we're just choosing what each of these are. So DB is the database, RST is the record set inside of that database, search name is the name we're looking for, and result is what we're returning. So the next part of this is checking if the text box is empty. If it's empty, it returns nothing. The third thing is right here, we're retrieving the user's input. We're saying whatever they put in here is now called search name. So if they put in John, that's equal to search name. And it pops up a message box saying search value is John. And then once it does that, it's going to access the database by using the DB current database. So that's a built-in function that will provide access to the database. And then when we do that, we're then setting the querying, where we're saying, hey, listen, I want you to execute a query and return all the results as the RST. That's what you're setting it as. That's the object. So the SQL query will retrieve all the fields where it matches the search name. And then, of course, if they don't find that, right, then we have to see, okay, if it's end of the file and we didn't find nothing, then at least execute at least if one record exists that's information. If not, then write no employee found. And then we end the if. This is our button. We're going to save this. This looks good. We'll then close this out. And we want to be sure that, well, once again, I know we did this before, but we want to be sure that the event is not the embedded macro, but it has to be the dropdown, the event procedure that we're doing. All right. Now we can go in. Let's see if it works. We're going to go into form, right? So we want to be sure that we're now in the form view, and we're going to run this. And let's see if it works. We're going to have some fun with this, okay? So get to this point, and then we're going to run it. So now let's put in the name. I'm going to put in John, and let's see if it finds John. It says search value is John, okay? And I found it. ID 1, John Smith. All right. Let's look at Bob. Can it find Bob? And it found Bob. And then let's look for Alice. Perfect. And then last but not least, let's look for May. No employee found with the name Joe. So this works perfectly. Try this out on your own. And then you could come up with a couple of different ideas to use VBA code in Microsoft Access. All right, everyone. I want to say thank you so much for watching these videos. If you haven't already checked out Access Introduction Level, Access Intermediate, this was Access Advanced. So feel free to check out those other two videos, and it sort of segues into each one. So you could start off with video 1, 2, and 3. But I hope you enjoyed this. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, everyone.